Welcome, Twistianity. Before I begin, I'd like to share an insight that you might think that I'm being really rough on Christians by tearing apart the Christian New Testament and proving that it is untrue. But the fact is, it's not your fault. No, if you're a Christian, it isn't your fault at all. You didn't create the religion of Christianity. Rabbis did. It all began with Paul in 52 CE. Paul was actually the first man to claim to be a rabbi. He claimed that he was not just a rabbi, but he was the best of the rabbis, trained by the best of prior to having the word rabbi used, but nonetheless, the best of the Jewish teachers. And without that training, the Christian New Testament wouldn't be so annoying. It wouldn't be so factually inaccurate. It wouldn't be so contradictory to what God said. But, when you study Judaism and listen to the precepts of Judaism and hear rabbis talk about Judaism, the first thing that comes to mind is these people are out of their ever-loving mind. All they do is contradict God and pretend like they're being pious while doing wallet biopsies. And so you had your religion written by the most annoying people on the planet, certainly the most annoying people to God. And so I'm here to tell you that you're not to blame for having an obnoxious New Testament that robs God of his son and of his Messiah and of his king and of his people and of his inheritance to his people and of his name. Rabbis are responsible. You just got the pile of SHIT delivered to you, and unfortunately, you believed it. So there we go. That's the bottom line of the whole thing. God said when he was speaking of his beloved son, before his beloved son and Messiah and our king was stolen from him to create the myth of Jesus, wrote, "Beside you," and he's now speaking of his beloved son, Dode, "and on your behalf, there will be a Zeroah, a strong arm who will be sowing the seeds of the harvest of offspring with tremendous influence, some significant courage, good character, and awesome ability as an impactful influencer. Yahowah. He will fight and have the capacity to perform relentlessly, really steadfastly, accomplishing what needs to be done, victorious and productive, no matter the obstacles that are thrown in the way and how challenging this job may be. And he will be your confidant, and he will be capable, he will be strengthened, he will be empowered, he will be firmly established and resolute, forceful and bold. Raised up high at your right side. Mizmor, lyric to be sung, 89:13. You may think it's odd that here in the midst of a tribute that Yahweh, as God, made on behalf of his beloved son, Dode, that he would entertain us with an interlude devoted to Dode Zeroah. After all, Dode was the greatest of the Zeroah. He was the Torah's definition of the Zeroah, which is a sacrificial lamb. His herald, his right hand, Dode's right hand, would be the final Zeroah, final of three. Moshe was the first of the Zeroah, Dode the greatest of the Zeroah, Yada the final Zeroah, that these three men would all serve a purpose that God had laid out for their time. And in this particular case, Yahweh is telling Dode that he will have a Zeroah. Now, that Zeroah is also claimed by Yashayah, but I think he's the same fellow, just people associated with God sharing their enthusiasm for having someone that will tend to the harvest at the time of the harvest, these being Shabuah and Towrah. And so it really is nice that they know that as bad as things have been, and for as long as they have been bad, there will be a resolution. There will be a strong arm that will be tending the seeds to cultivate a productive harvest. And the reason this is so essential for us to know in a song that is whose lyrics are dedicated entirely to Dode is that Dode would essentially be unknown in terms of his accomplishments and accolades had it not been for his Zeroah. Well, Dode is the right hand of God. The right hand of Dode is this very man. And without him discovering, being the first to discover in some, well, certainly 2,500 years, maybe 3,000 years, that Dode, David, is the actual Messiah, not that other guy. That he is the real Son of God, not that other guy. That he is the former and returning king, not that other guy. That he was the one who was crucified in 33 CE, fulfilling Passover, not that other guy. He is the one whose soul went into Sheol to deposit our guilt, never to be seen again, not that other guy. And no one would know it had Dode's Zeroah not determined it. And in this regard, there is a really interesting statement that is made in Yashayah, Isaiah 53. You may know of it. The prophecy that speaks of Dode as the Passover lamb, taking on our guilt and depositing it such that it is never seen again. This magnificent prophecy about Dode serving in this way has a preamble that specifically says that the one who comes to know the identity of the Zeroah is the one who will properly explain this to you. You put it together? You know why Yashayah then speaks of this Zeroah? Why he celebrates him? Why Yashayah, in the context of talking about this man, he's so excited that this man is in the wine vat with him, the first one ever to tread in that wine vat with him, and serving as the one cultivating the seeds that he has sown so they can be a productive harvest, the one who is fulfilling Shabuah and Towrah according to Yashayah, and he immediately identifies this man as the man from Edom who saves many. And all of this is because, well, what Dode has done is magnificent in opening the doorway to life by fulfilling Passover and perfecting us by taking our guilt into Sheol on Matzah, by opening the door to God's family on Bikurim by being the firstborn, fulfilling firstborn children. And Dode will serve us again when he returns as king on Kippurim. And while Dode has every title that is important, chosen one, son, Messiah, king, branch, shepherd, and Zeroah, no one would know it had it not been for the one who is telling you about it now, which is why he got a mention in Dode's song, because he is essential to the story of Dode. And it says that he will come and present all of this in tremendous power, showing some courage. And I want to tell you, it takes courage, because to tell this story, you are attacked from every possible angle. Christians have a conniption fit when you tell them the truth, because the truth doesn't sit well with their religious faith. Rabbis are even worse. And of course, Muslims, I kill you. I've had thousands of death threats. It takes courage. to tell the truth. I had a person the other day that wrote me, a religious Jew, and he was saying, you're pronouncing Dode's name incorrectly. It's Dawid, as if the wah makes the ah sound when it clearly makes the o sound in Hebrew. And the y, which he replaced with an I, but the Y addition, the additional vowel, is only found in about a quarter of the references to Dode, and none within 300 years of his life, including when he wrote his own songs. I think he knew how to spell his name. And when his father, Yahweh, spoke of him in the 89th Mizmor, it's all written Daleth, Wah, Daleth, which is pronounced Dode. But it is interesting that his challenge, he said, to prove you're wrong, most of the scholars and sages pronounce it this way. And the point is that truth has never been popular. If you go back to the Exodus, all but 2 men were kept out of the promised land because the other 599,800 or 998 were excluded because they were wrong. It's just the nature of things. It takes courage, and it takes some character. And I want to tell you, figuring this out, well, it took some ability as well, because, well, in all of human history that we know of over the last 6,000 years, there's only 2 people that figured it out, Dode and myself. So, yeah, it does take some doing. And when he talks about being an impactful influencer and Yahowah, the person with this fight and capacity to perform, that does not mean this person is going to be popular. All it means is that he will influence those who are meant to hear this message and respond to it. It is a derivative of Gabor, which is the most really empowering term applied to Dode. Dode is God's Gabor, his most competent and capable man. He goes on to say of Dode that this individual that would serve Dode, he will be exceedingly confident and capable, steadfast. He's going to be empowered, yes, because as Dode wrote about him and Yeshaya affirmed, he's the Choder. And the Choder is imbued with the 7 spirits of Yah. So he is firmly established. He's resolute. He's forceful. He's bold. And he will be raised up on high. In fact, his voice comes from on high. His insights come from on high. And he is going to raise all that can be known about Dode and his father Yahowah on high. And he will even lift up those who capitalize on what he has learned about Dode and Yahowah on high. That is the purpose of the Shabuah harvest. It is the purpose of the Teruah gleaning. It is the purpose of the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. And he will be at your right side. Indeed. Come Kippurim, when after Teruah and the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, and the adulterous woman that is Israel is purged of her religiosity, then it is true that Yada is going to take his place as Dode's best man at his side for this symbolic wedding of Yisrael to her returning king. And that this is Dode's song, should Yahweh be speaking to his son, our king, as he has throughout this Mizmor, extolling his virtues, then God is telling him that the responsibility of leadership, which can at times be burdensome, will be delegated, making his forevermore considerably more enjoyable. So just as Dode carried the great burden of our guilt into Sheol to perfect us, it appears that one of his beneficiaries, Yada, his herald, specifically his Zeroah, will have the opportunity to return the favor, unburdening his king. If this is the proper interpretation, and it is clearly the most in keeping with the context, then this is the best possible news for Dowd. It means that he will have the opportunity to lead the eternal remnant of Yisrael through a proxy, much like Yahweh did through Moshe. As a result of his enormous contributions, he will get to celebrate with his people while never being aggravated by them. And he will enjoy the rights of kingship without many of the burdens and responsibilities. Yahweh clearly is the best father ever. Now, if only I could find my Zeroah and right hand. I think actually I have many, so that's the difference. Dowd gets one, and I will have at least 40. Maybe 70. I think 70. Yes. Rich says 70. And while our Savior and King deserves no less, and while he couldn't fully represent God otherwise, this isn't what his junior Zeroah had in mind, selfishly perhaps, but after having devoted most of his waking hours for, well, now several decades to sowing the seeds for the harvest, the choder, well, fact is he was looking for a little R&R and to letting his voice and branches down, if you catch the drift. Anticipating a small retirement and a prolonged vacation. Not going to be the case, but we do have teleconferencing, don't we? I think that we ought to be able to beam up by satellite and beam down, and so I think we'll be able to do much of this in lovely destinations as we explore the beautiful nature of this planet restored to the conditions of the Garden of Eden. Now, as much as I have chafed at being drawn away from the uninhibited joy of anonymity, and under the nom de plume of Yada, to the acclaim of Junior Zeroah, which means observant foreigner, Bashar, which means herald, Ida, which means restoring witness, and Choder, which is the stem off the main branch, tasked with the responsibility of preparing Yisrael for the return of her God and Messiah. I'm not going to complain. Yeah, it has been a delight to work with. He's made every moment fun, and he has provided ample support. Truly, there is nothing more satisfying than engaging with God, particularly on something important to him. And it's his son. It's his reunion. It's his return to earth. It's the reopening of Eden. So since the past score of years has been a rewarding adventure, I'm confident we will continue in like fashion. He will assuredly provide all the support necessary to get the job done and to achieve what needs to be done at the standards that he finds acceptable. So it is hi-ho, hi-ho, off to work we go. Oh, yeah, that's what Asher said. So are you the dummy, or which one are you? Frankly, since it was so obvious, we ought not be surprised. In his previous reign over Yisrael, the pressure and responsibility of the job of guiding, nurturing, and protecting the flock, well, became overwhelming at times, such that Dowd made a number of marginal decisions, and he beat himself up over them. Naturally apprehensive at that the past would repeat itself and degenerate and denigrate the future, Dowd may have made this request. So his father has honored it. That said, Dowd is the preeminent Zeroah. He is the protective shepherd. He's the sacrificial lamb. He is the ultimate strong arm of God. It is his most distinguished title. His nephesh soul, feminine in Hebrew, like Zeroah, manifests Geborah, which is also feminine, and it speaks of all of the character and courage, awesome ability, and tremendous influence of a mother, even for her children. In this way, Dode represents the father, while his Zeroah serves kind of as an extension for the Ruach, for the set-apart spirit. Our spiritual influence, I think, that at this point, Dode received his whole existence, and certainly I enjoy now as the Choder is going to be manifest and enabling us to do everything that God wants us to achieve. Now, because Dode, as our Messiah and King, is God's strong arm, is one raised up to serve at Yahweh's right side, it makes sense that he would be given what he has provided. And in this way, he will be a master orchestrator and a delegator. And to such an extent, every member of the covenant family should be eager to engage and serve at his side. We are called to work on behalf of our Father. Now, by way of review, thus far, Dode's name has appeared once in the 89th Mizmor, while Zeroah, sacrificial lamb, protective shepherd, and the one who sows the seeds for a productive harvest, has been deployed twice to describe once Dode as our Savior, and the second time, Yada as his herald. Dode has also been called the Bashar, the chosen one. He is God's Ebed, co-worker, and Ad Olam, an eternal witness. He is a Mashal, an articulate leader. He is Yamin, the right hand of God. He is Azaz Yad, the strong hand of Yahweh. Therefore, one might conclude that the reputation and repetition of the Zeroah as the only accolade thus far and title that is presented a second time suggests that it is the Mashiach's, the Messiah's, and Malek's most revealing and important depiction. This admission is sufficient to take all of the air out of Christianity and Judaism that are longing for a Messiah. Nobody's looking for a Zeroah. And I can recommend 3 of them. You won't be shortchanged. They're all interesting characters.
No one's looking for a Nakri either.
No, they're not. Nor a Choder.
No.
But based upon what God says about them, you'd be wise too.
You might want to pay attention.
You might want to pay attention. Yes, indeed. In fact, there is no entry into the Shavua harvest, into the Teruah Lakat, or any benefit from the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, nor attendance at the grand family reunion without listening to him. So why not just get in the swing of things? He made it into this magnificent song, singing the praises of Dode to David for a reason. But there is much more. The second Mizmor is where we were told that there was a religious conspiracy afoot, and it was all designed to misappropriate the status and authority of Yahweh and of his Mashiach, his anointed Messiah. You know that the second Mizmor tells us explicitly that there would be a religious conspiracy to misappropriate the status and authority of both Yahweh as God and also of the title Mashiach, appointed Messiah. In the same psalm, God announced, Ben Ane Ata, you are my son, to Dode, suggesting that the conspiracy was foisted by Paul, who protested that, there was this myth named Jesus that was somehow the Son of God and the Messiah, when God said, nope, my son is Dode. The Messiah is Dode. and anyone who says otherwise is calling me a liar. And I don't appreciate that. Excuse me. Excuse me. You want to have your own show? Are you prepared? Have you done your homework? What have you translated? My Asher is trying to draw Wookiee's attention, I guess. So we read in Isaiah 40:10, great prophet Yeshaya, when we have a wonderful kinship, that God will be returning with his Shazak, with an empowered leader, and with an impassioned defender. He said that his Zeroah, this protective shepherd and sacrificial lamb, would be speaking for him. And in the next statement, we're told that Dod will be the Ra'ah, the shepherd, tending the Almighty's flock. Then at the conclusion of Yeshaya, Isaiah 40:11, we learn that Dod will be gathering God's lambs, Zeroah Hu, in his strong and capable arms, serving the flock both as the protective ram and the sacrificial lamb. Although here and elsewhere, the Zeroah title also fits his co-worker and his apprentice, if you will. Now, the interplay between Zeroah being aided by another is also seen in Solomon's dedication speech to Yisrael, which was recorded in 2 Chronicles 6, when the king's son revealed that the Nachri would speak of his father's role as the hand of God, and that he would reveal that Dod is God's Shazak, most powerful and passionate leader, while serving as Dod's Zeroah. When we turn then to 2 Samuel 7, we are reminded that Dod, David, is Yahweh's Ebed, his co-worker. Upon his return, he will be God's Neged, most conspicuous and informed guide. The Almighty said that he would make Dod's Shem, name, and reputation Hagadol, the greatest of all. Doesn't leave much room for a Bar Kokhba, a Kiba, a Maimonides, a Paul, or a Jesus Christ, does it? In addition, Yahweh announced that he will Bereth Asha, engage with the covenant family through Dod. As we progress in this great prophecy, my personal favorite, and when we reach 2 Samuel 7:12, God categorically states that he would establish Dod's reign over his kingdom while reestablishing the family home and elevating his throne forevermore. Then Yahweh revealed, Anehaya Lahu La-ab, Wa-hu Haya La-ane La-ben. I was, I am, and I always will be for him as a father. And he was, is, and always will be for me as a son. Mindful that we learn from repetition, Yahweh affirmed that Dod's Beath family and Malacca kingdom would Ammon be established and endure ad olam as a restoring witness throughout eternity. When we turn to the 103rd Mizmor, we discover that Yahweh's Barak, his blessings, would be provided through Dod's Nefesh, soul. He is the Gaal, kinsman redeemer, who paid the price for us to live. Then in the 19th statement, we find another affirmation that Dod's Keshe, his throne, and his Maluk, his kingdom, will serve as a mashal, a vivid picture of what we should expect in heaven. Further into the text, Psalm 103:20 explains that Dod is Yahweh's Gabor, his most courageous and capable man. Quite a distinction, isn't it? He is affirmed elsewhere, and it serves as validation of my conclusions that Dod is Gabriel, which is a compound of Gabor and El, God's most courageous individual. He is so obvious that it's amazing that so few have come to understand it. Yahweh made it obvious. Yashaya, Isaiah made it obvious. Samuel made it obvious. Dod himself with his own hand made it obvious. Moshe writing the Torah made it obvious. There is just no mistaking the fact that Dod is the chosen one, the Messiah, the Son of God, our Savior, the returning King. And yet, with it all being obvious, the world has been oblivious. Now, moving on to the 20th Mizmor, we find that Dod will be dispatched as God's principal Ezer, collaborator, to assist those struggling during the day of troubles. Moving through the 6th verse of this same psalm, we read that Yahweh intends to Yasha, provide salvation through his Mashiach, his Messiah, Dod. This bold declaration concludes by saying that God intends to respond from heaven through his Gabora, through the very nephesh soul of the Zeroah, cultivating productive offspring, and his Ruach spirit, which God will marshal to Yasha, save the covenant family. Then for those who benefit from a reminder, we read that the Melech King is offering Yasha, liberation, deliverance, and salvation. Addressing Dod, the beloved by name, the Melech King is called Shemach, the branch, in Jeremiah 23:5, and elsewhere. This presentation concludes by reminding us that Yahweh Shadak Anaku, Yahweh is our source of vindication because he is right. Now, those are the facts, and they are consistent, they are compelling. For us to be right with God, Dod must be the focus of our attention. He is the Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb. He is the Mashiach, Messiah. He is the Ben El, the very Son of God, and he is our Yasha, the one who delivered us from our guilt, saving us. And while these are some of the reasons he was qualified to perform in this manner, by stating them in this way, we know that Yahweh is continuing to speak about his Son. This being true, just as it is Dod's throne being addressed in this statement. In the previous one, it was the Messiah's Zeroah. So being correct and vindicating, Sadak, being right, being honest, being fair, being accurate, being just, being acquitting, while executing good judgment to properly resolve disputes, misvat, along with adroitly pondering all of the questions required to make rational and moral decisions. This is a compound now of ma, to question, and thus ponder and consider, and shafat, which means to decide. So it is to think about the process of being discerning. And that serves as the very foundation of your throne, of your authority, and your position of honor. Can you imagine being in a position where the creator God of the universe is saying of a man, of a human? Now, he's the smartest, he's the best among us. But nonetheless, the creator God of the universe, Yahweh, said this of Dod: being correct and vindicating, being right, being honest, being fair, being accurate, while executing good judgment to properly resolve disputes, serves as the foundation of your throne, your authority, and your position of honor. boy, what would he give to have God say that to any one of us? He just said, Dode's right. And because you're right, I'm establishing your throne on that basis.
It's good to be right.
It is good to be
very
right.
Good.
Oh, my. By the way, did you hear any place in there where Yahweh said, your faith is sublime? No.
Not about faith.
It said, I really like what you believe. You got a great religion there, Dode. Well, what is your name anyway? Oh, I just shudder. We heard a rabbi on social media post that was in my feed to my Facebook page telling me that the beauty of heaven is there's no poop. There's no food, and so there's no poop in heaven. And then he, with a straight face, he said, but there's various levels of heaven. It's just like going to a concert where there's good seats and cheap seats, and you pay more for the good seats.
So you have to buy your way in for a better position? Is that how it works?
Oh, bravo, rabbi, get a seat. You know that in synagogues, which, by the way, is a Greek term, so it's not even a Hebrew term. It's synagogue is Greek. That you pay an annual membership fee, and it's expensive to join the synagogue, and you can't attend the synagogue unless you pay this enormous fee, and sometimes in the tens of thousands of dollars. But that only gets you in the door of the synagogue. That puts you in the back row. If you want to be like in the good seats in the front row, well, that'll cost you like double or triple.
So what's a backstage pass going to cost you?
Oh, my God. So to go kiss the rabbi's ring? Whoo. We're talking about millions, pal.
Ouch.
I think I'll pass. The rabbinical throne is built on greed. Dode's is built on being right. Loyalty, devotion, and enduring love. Chesed, great favoritism and generosity, and the passion to be genuinely compassionate, along with the steadfast commitment to the truth. Trustworthiness and honesty, being reliable and dependable. Encounter those who enter your presence. Ms. Moore, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 89:14. Again, God is saying this of his chosen one, of his beloved son, of our Messiah, of the King, Dode. It's just, what an endorsement. I mean, when he's re-coronated and he's there, he's returning with God from heaven, and he's king of everything. Well, God's have his right arm draped over Dole's shoulder. There's my son. I'm proud of him. That's probably a good enough endorsement, right? You're making your son as brilliant as the sun. When you return, you're calling him Elyon, the Almighty, and you're telling him that he will be the ruler of the entire universe forevermore. And that you have given him this honor because he's right, because he's trustworthy, because he's reliable, and everyone who enters his presence is impressed with his integrity.
It's a tremendous responsibility.
Oh, what respect, though. I mean, what he's doing for Dode here is really what he did not do for Moshe. And I think... first of all, I think there's the possibility God realized that he gave Moshe too much responsibility and not enough support. I think it's very possible that God recognized I did. That's why Moshe melted down and says, you might as well kill me because I can't do this job, and you've treated me unfairly to put me in this position. And, Yahweh never once blames Moshe for the meltdown. I think maybe he realized he did. And so when Dode returns, God is not putting Dode in that position. He's beginning with, here's my kid. I'm proud of him. He's right. He was steadfast. He saw the job through. He's dependable. He has integrity. He's my kid. I'm proud of him.
None of us are going to be there without him.
This is true. We are going to respect him because of the fact that the doorway to life, which we enjoy, the means of our perfection, where our guilt was taken away and taken into Sheol, hell, so that we could be charter members of God's covenant family via Bikurim. This is the reason we're all there. And so, of course, we're all going to be appreciative. But you imagine looking up to a man who is now empowered by God, as brilliant as the sun, that God is saying, this is my kid, and man, I'm proud of him. And this is your king. You should be proud of him. Wow. It's just impressive. It brings tears to my eyes to see God speak that highly of a person. You know, I get a fair amount of criticism these days because of the fact that over the past 24 years, I've gone through a process where I have, Asher, please, where I have developed a base of knowledge by spending 10, 12, 14 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week, translating Yahweh's testimony from the oldest extant sources, the Dead Sea Scrolls, stripping it of the diacritical markings of the Masoretes, which means I'm purging it of religiosity. And then commenting on it, making connections so that we would understand it. You're building up this base of knowledge. And as you do, you're forming conclusions all the way along the process, which is how you retain things, how you come to understand it. And I have, for this entire time, shared, putting my thoughts in writing and sharing them. And as you learn, you grow. And as you learn and grow, you understand more, and you're able to process things. For example, this 89th Mizmor, if you had given it to me to translate and share with you 5 years ago, I would never have been able to process the realization that Dode served as the Passover lamb, fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim in 33 CE, and that he is the only Messiah that matters. He's the only Son of God that matters. That he is God's chosen one. And that means that there was no Jesus, that's a complete farce and an insult to Father and Son. And that every aspect of what rabbis teach about Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and about Dode, and about the covenant, and about Yahowah is wrong. You couldn't do that without this really enormous foundation of knowledge and transition to understanding. But as you grow and you learn, you transition beyond things that you previously thought might have been true. Like you realize there is no renewed covenant and New Testament. It's all rubbish. And that puts a person in a challenging position, because there's this religious notion that those who speak for God must be perfect. And that's not God's view. And I'm saying that at this time because we're talking about Dode. I know Dode quite well. And Dode was a million miles from perfect. And yet Yahowah is waxing poetic about him, saying that he has integrity, that he's trustworthy, that he's dependable, that he is compassionate, that he is loving, that he has character, that he has integrity, and is calling him our Savior and the chosen shepherd and his chosen one and his son. And that he trusts him with the responsibility of being king of everywhere and for all time. And you realize that this man was flawed. And what it says is that God's not looking for perfection. You don't have to be perfect to work with him. If God was looking for perfection, then he would be a really lonely fellow. We all grow, we learn, we make mistakes, we overcome trial and error. It's a process that causes us to grow, to develop character. One of the terms here was that Dode's representative would have character. You cannot have character without having stumbled, because character is all developed by having come up against an obstacle and having figured out a way around it. Having fallen and getting up again is what builds character. Having failed and then found a way to succeed is what builds confidence and character. And Doe did these things, and Yah was proud of him for doing these things. And so we need to look at life with Yahowah and what he cares about and how he judges people and thinks of people from that perspective. You know, even when God spoke directly to the children of Israel without the middleman. During the beginning of the Exodus, he came down Mount Towrah, Asher. You're not going to, Asher, excuse me. I'm sorry to speak loudly. I need to get Asher's attention. Asher was the product of two winners of the Westminster Dog Show. So she's a very showy dog. And she has been bred to be a showy dog and been bred to radiate, you love me. You really, really love me. Or who was the actress, Sally Fields, you like me, you really, really like me. And that's Asher's nature. So she sometimes gets a little vocal about it when she wants our undivided attention. But what we are talking about here is that when Yahweh himself cut out the middleman, speaking directly to his people, and he gave them 3 days to prepare. And he came down and he simply told them that he was Yahweh, the God of Abraham, of Yishak and Jacob, the God of the covenant, the God of Yisrael, and that it was he who was providing the Torah directions and instructions to Moshe. And the children of Israel immediately responded and told him to go away and to shut up. They never wanted to hear from him again or see him again. And so that did not go very well. And this was God. So did God handle that situation perfectly? Rich doesn't want to say that, but he doesn't want to answer the question because he's uncomfortable saying that God could do something that was less than perfect. But it had a really horrible result, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
It didn't go over well.
It did not go over well. So is it capable? Is God himself capable of learning from an encounter that was not ideal? Now,
absolutely.
Now, if God used his ability to go forward in time because he is a spiritual being, which means he can see our future in our past, he could have seen the result of this. But if he watched the result of it, then what's the purpose of doing it?
How do you grow if you know everything?
Right. How could you enjoy a relationship if you knew every step of the way in that relationship before it began? There would be no purpose for us, to be no purpose for life. So sometimes Yahweh is going to do what he did there. He's going to wing it. And sometimes, even with God, it's not going to turn out perfect. And you know what God does when he shows that side of himself? He makes himself approachable. We don't have to be intimidated. So God himself is willing to say, well, maybe the platypus wasn't the best idea. Maybe speaking directly to my people isn't the best idea. And by then coming up with a new plan, worked beautifully. When Yahweh took the children of Israel to the border of the Promised Land, and he asked Moshe to pick a leader from each of the 12 tribes of Israel and to send them in to check out the entire land. Do you think God knew it was going to be a disaster before he sent them?
Probably not.
I think no. I think the answer is no. I think that had he known, why go through the exercise? So he sends them off, and they besmirch him. They thumb up their nose at this present of the land, and they demean Yahweh. And this wasn't some of them. It was all of them, save 2 individuals. And Moshe himself couldn't be counted on to take a stand and do the right thing either. Even Moshe was silent. In fact, Moshe, the things he said were inappropriate at the time. And there's only 2 of them. And it meant that God had to hang with the 20-somethings and less for another 40 years. While all of those that he had served and he had taught and he had tried to help, who were over 20, died. They were killed because of their belligerence, because they were counterproductive to be around. You think God enjoyed that?
No, absolutely not.
So he asked for something to be done that led to that result. Pretty horrific. Now, I think at that moment, God just flat out changed the way that he was going to deal with his children. This is, by the way, begins really in the 11th chapter, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th chapters of Numbers. And once the adults are all gone, and he has the 20-somethings, and they're going to have to spend 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep to survive. And he gives them a speech. It is the longest single narrative I've ever translated from Yahweh, where all uninterrupted, detail after detail after detail. I have a plan to resolve this. And this plan to resolve it's going to play out over 3,450 years. But I got a plan. Eventually, you are going to get back into the promised land, and you're going to be welcome there. And I'm going to transform the earth back into the conditions found in Eden. And we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. I've got 3 guys, and those 3 guys are all going to make the sacrifice necessary to get this done, and the Dode is one of them. And it's all going to work out, and it's a very detailed presentation of precisely how all of that is going to play out. So I just like everyone to consider that life is meaningful when we grow. And the best way to grow is to learn new things and come to understand even more, and not to be in a position where God provides a data dump and all of a sudden on your first hello, you automatically know everything, because then there would be no purpose to learning, to growing, to working, to serving, to doing anything in life. And the same thing would be true for God. That is true for us. So since Yahweh has affirmed that Dode was Sadak right, and that he was vindicating in conjunction with Mishpat, we have the ability to exercise good judgment and resolve disputes regarding the choices that Dode made. And in this way, Yahweh destroyed the basis of Judaism and Christianity, because it means that by resolving these disputes in this way through Mishpat, David became our Savior. There is none other. Now, the validation of Dode being Sadak, right, acquitted, and vindicated is repeated throughout the prophets. It is the single most repetitive accolade that is attributed to Dode, being right. This is especially insightful because he was not perfect in this life. Therefore, with only the Torah, its Bereth and Mikre to correct and perfect him, God redeemed him with his Torah, because there was no other alternative. This, too, is devastating to Christianity and Judaism, which degrade the Torah by referencing it as Judaic law. That's not what it represents at all. And then writing over it with their New Testament and Talmud. The fact that an imperfect man was declared correct with God, upright, righteous, and acquitted, means that Paul was wrong when he condemned the Torah, claiming that a single act of non-compliance damned the observant, when that is simply not the case. And in Judaism, where adherence to Judaic law determines righteousness, we see otherwise in Yah's declaration regarding Dowd. He was right, not good. And that is largely why rabbis disrespect him. And of course, there was no Judaic law to make him right. He was right because of the Torah. Also, since Yahweh provided a solitary path to reconciliation through his mikre, beginning with Pesach and Matzah, for God to pronounce Dowd right and vindicating in this context, it becomes obvious that he played the leading role in enabling the spring Moedim in year 4000 Yah. The very foundation of his throne, being the seat of his honor, was predicated upon his willingness to serve in this capacity. And it is what made it possible for Yahweh to remain true to his word and yet also merciful to those entering his presence. This is one of many statements where the fact that there is no distinction between uppercase and lowercase letters in Hebrew makes it a bit hard sometimes to determine who is being spoken of when you have a pronoun like you, uppercase God, lowercase Dowd, or somebody else. And it can be interpreted as referring to the subject of the Mizmor, which should mean speaking to Dowd as his son, or the speaker who is his father, Yahweh. And the more we contemplate the possibilities, we realize that both interpretations are true. And so the distinction between, is God speaking of Dowd serving in this role for him, or of Dowd's Zeroah and his right arm serving Dowd in this capacity, both are true. And that's a lesson in and of itself, is it not? It becomes apparent that this exceptional man will come to reflect the very nature of his God. His lives, therefore, are both a great step forward for a man and a giant leap forward for all mankind. Now, Yahweh made it possible for Dowd to serve as the Pesach Gael and then fulfill Matzah en route to Bokurim in year 4000 Yah, which was 33 CE, facilitating the benefits of the covenant. And because they have done this, we can capitalize upon Shabuah as a harvest. We have the opportunity to become more effective witnesses during Teruah. We can encourage people to be part of the Teruah harvest as well, and to benefit from the Adamah Parah. The fifth mikre, this invitation to be called out and meet, serves as a herald for our King's Kapurim return. Now, Ashri, which is the first word of Dowd's first psalm, is a derivative of Asher, representing the initial term I tried to translate, 2.5 decades ago in my favorite prophecy, Samuel, 2 Samuel 7. I did so to correct the misappropriation of the word throughout English Bibles. Every translation fostered the false impression that the prophecy pertained to Jesus rather than to the king to whom it was actually addressed. Therefore, the opening line of the next statement is near and dear to everyone involved. It reads, the family, the people who are aware of and acknowledge Teruah, are delighted to show the way to be blessed, Yahweh, and in light of your presence they walk. Psalm 89:15. Ladies and gentlemen, without Towrah, there is no Kippurim. Without Kippurim, there is no return of Yahweh or the Messiah. Without the return of the Messiah, our King and Yahweh, there is no purpose to the planet. It is not restored. It is destroyed. All life ceases to exist. The human experience is for naught. It is a very difficult thing, I'm sure, for people to process, because there isn't anyone outside of those that have read my books and listened to these programs that understands what Towrah represents. All Jews believe that Towrah is actually Rosh Hashanah, and it's the head of the Babylonian year, and they celebrate it as Rosh Hashanah. It isn't. That's a great, great, great insult to God. Towrah is the Day of Days. Whether or not it is the most important Mikra, I'm not going to make that judgment. But I'm going to tell you that without Towrah, nothing else matters. Nothing. There is no family of God without Towrah. Now, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, because Towrah follows Shabuah, and Shabuah follows Bikurim. And since Dod fulfilled Pesach and Matzah, leading to Bikurim, and Bikurim is a harvest, there were those in the covenant who received the benefit of his fulfillment of Bikurim and are in Shamaim heaven with Dod at this time. And so God has a family, small as it may be. Without our collaboration, there would be no Shabuah harvest. So it is important to recognize that Shabuah will transpire because Dod had a Zeroah who could articulate what needs to be known for that harvest to be productive. Now, all of that said, the fact is that without Towrah, not so much its gleaning, which is the last opportunity for souls to become immortal, but without the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, where Yahweh brings the entire remnant of Yisrael, who is not religious, back to Jerusalem. And the Adamah Parah is sacrificed with Eliah performing as the master of ceremonies, and Yahweh igniting the fire, Yahweh himself purging the earth of all assailants, all foes of Israel, all who are religious and political and conspiratorial, and terraforming the earth back to the conditions found in Eden, so that this guilty woman that is represented by Israel, that is now gathered in Jerusalem, is purged of their guilt by the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. That is an absolute necessity for there to be a homecoming. This is an absolute requirement for Yahweh to return with Dod to the earth and to his fractured family, so that the promise Yahweh has made throughout the Torah and prophets is fulfilled, and that we find a reconciliation in this relationship as we enter the restored conditions on earth to Eden for 1,000 years. And so Towrah is it. Now, Yahweh has a small family because of Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, and Shabuah. But without Towrah, he doesn't return to earth. The last three Moed go unfulfilled. Dod is not king, not of the earth anyway. So Yahweh would have broken a promise. not like him. So that is why Towrah is mentioned here. There's no reason to mention Pesach, Matzah, Makudim. They were fulfilled. The Shabuah will bring more souls to heaven. But for Dowd to serve as king, he is dependent upon Towrah. And that is why it's highlighted. So the family who are aware of and acknowledge Towrah, those are the ones who will serve as Dowd's subjects, as Dowd's family, as the covenant family, as those who benefit from all that God has to offer. Towrah, which is sometimes called trumpets, is the day of the herald. It's the 5th of 7, Moed Mikre. It's a time to expose the corruptions while sharing the truth, crying out in alarm while shouting to God, blowing the shofar to announce the upcoming harvest of souls, or the concurrent harvest of souls. It is to announce Dowd's return. And Towrah, those who observe Towrah, those who are aware of and who acknowledge the purpose of Towrah, are delighted to show the way, and they're blessed by Yahowah. In the light of your presence, they walk. We will live side by side with our God. We will live shoulder to shoulder with our King. We will experience earth as Adam and Chawah enjoyed Eden. We will do so for 1,000 years, and then we will celebrate an eternity. This is really an extraordinary statement. And it all comes down to Towrah. To show you the difference between what we learn from Yahowah and what is in the Christian New Testament, Paul's one attempt at a prophecy pertains to what he would call trumpets. And he called it the rapture. And he said that this rapture was going to take place during his lifetime. And he spoke of the dead and the living and how they would disappear and the like. And he was completely wrong. It did not transpose during his lifetime. The next harvest wasn't Towrah, but in fact Shabuah. And Shabuah was 2,000 years away. And that anyone who believed anyone who would believe Paul would be excluded from it. And it's not a rapture in the sense of a tearing away. And it's not even the important part of the day. It's a gleaning. The sacrifice of the Adam of Parah and the restoring of the adulterous woman that is the order of the day. It will be the greatest show on earth. There's so much to Towrah. Just to go in and explain all of it, it's 30 minutes just to explain what's going to happen before, during, and after Towrah. And it's the most magnificent 15 days in the history of our planet, and all that God's going to do, what's going to happen with Elia and Dowd, myself. And one of the things that was just so interesting to me is in translating Numbers 15 in the wilderness, Bamidbar, God goes through the entire process. He talks about what's going to happen with the lamb, what's going to happen with the bull, what will happen with the goat, and how collectively they resolve Israel's guilt so that she can come home and live at home with God. And I just think it's so marvelous the way he has put this beautiful portrait together for us. Now, it's interesting that this speaks of Towrah, of course, skipping past the next harvest, which is Shabuah. I suspect this was for a number of reasons. Once Dowd has fulfilled Chag Matzah, it is his Zeroah's responsibility to sow the seeds, which will bear the fruit on Shabuah. And my assignment is to share what he has done with the Israelites and with Goyim to maximize this harvest, not in terms of numbers of people, but in quality of those individuals. That's why I'm not trying to dumb this down. That's why I'm very insistent that if you want to be part of the covenant family, you'd better be right. You'd better be willing to work. You'd better be dedicated and devoted to serving alongside both myself and Dode and Elia and Yahowah, not just now, but forevermore. We're not looking for loafers. We're looking for contributors. We want to spend our time in Shamaim with individuals who are committed, who are resourceful, who enjoy this opportunity to work with God and to serve his son. So it is true that there will be a final gleaning on Towrah, but more importantly, the Bashar, Dode's herald, is describing Dode's return, which will be on Kippurim. He must warn God's people that they have this one last opportunity to flee the clutches of religion and politics and embrace their Messiah, King, and Savior. And during the 3.5 years he's going to be doing this alongside Elia, you're going to have the Torahless one, known as the Antichrist, in Jerusalem, operating against us. And you're going to have Muslims flooding into the Promised Land, ravaging Jews. This is an amazing time that we're about to enter. And for you to be part of forevermore, you need to embrace what God has to say about Dode and reject what Paul had to say about Jesus, or Akiba had to say about Bar Kokhba, and that's star. You need to accept the terms and conditions of the Bereth. You need to attend the Mikra. You need to acknowledge Yahweh's name. You need to be among those invited to walk into the light of Yahweh's presence. You also need to appreciate that God had a lot to say about this bull, this Adamah Parah, this individual that is responsible as a Zeroah for fulfilling Shabuah and Teruah. God said, listen to him and do as he asks. He's not going to make selfish requests. He's not asking you for anything for himself. Everything he has asked is for your soul, for the benefit of your soul and your soul alone. Well, this is a good place for us to end our program. We're just past the hour time. I appreciate you being in the Yahowah blog in our Rainbow studio as Asher has attempted to bring this message to you, or at least underscore what she thought was important about it. And, we do know that Yahowah loves dogs. Not only were there animals in the Garden of Great Joy and communication with those animals, but the man that he respected the most of all of those who sojourned with him during the Exodus was a man named Dog, Caleb. So Asher is doing her part to contribute to the story. Well, thank you for listening. We look forward to being with you this time tomorrow. Good day.